Now, this doesn't honestly work on eBay anymore. It may be one of the biggest reasons why your business has faltered and you're not selling very much. Hey, it's Don. Today I wanted to address one of the issues I see after looking at hundreds and hundreds of stores, both public and private. And this is something that does not seem to work on eBay anymore at all. Now, if you're selling $4, $5, $10 max items with free shipping or even without, and that's the majority of your stock in your store, you may be having troubles. Whenever I look at a store and I see no decent value items, all items valued at a couple bucks to $5 or $10, and they're very common items, usually that store is not doing very well. And that's why I'm looking at it to begin with. The value of what you list has got to be a certain level for you to do any reasonable amount of business or to even make a decent profit in any way, shape, or form. If you're listing something for, say, $5 with free shipping, and I don't care if you only paid 5, 10 cents for it, and your profit margins are huge on that item. The return on your actual time, your investment in time, and your investment in listing fees are going to eat up the majority of your profits. Most people just look at it as a profit margin aspect. And that's honestly no good. Unless your profit margin's huge and it's selling for a decent share of money. Now, we, in the past, only listed stuff that were $15 or more. We've moved that up to $19.99, 20 bucks basically, or more. Our value-wise, whenever we list something, we want to at least to be able to get up these days at least 450 bucks, more so 500 per hour of list time. I don't want to be known as a clearance store, and I don't want to be known as a person who only sells cheap items. Now, I know you got to start somewhere. This isn't a criticism for those who can't find the items, but your goal from this point, if you're only selling those couple dollar items with free shipping, is to increase the value per item of the stuff that you are listing. This all comes down to plain and simple math. If you're only listing 15 items that you may get $5 for in an hour, that's 75 bucks if they sell at full price. And if you're including shipping in that $5 price, even if it's like a letter rate or a stamp or whatever the case may be, the value isn't there. You're wasting your time on low value items that won't get you a super long distance. And especially with a lot of folks complaining about having very little sales at this point. If the majority of your items are very low dollar value items and you're only selling a few of them, you're not making buck to probably even possibly pay your eBay selling fees. That's why I say it comes down to math. I've seen reports of other people point out other sellers who had tons of items, they were all low value, and they stopped selling through the summer. Their sales dive bombed in 50, 60, 70, 80% of their sales volume dropped down. Now, what happens when your sales plummets? Your selling fees go up drastically immediately. So if you're cut down in half on what you normally sell, you're still paying the same amount of money for those same listings, your same store level. Again, that's why math is so important doing this. Our selling fees are well below 20%. Because we only sell items of a certain value, and we try to list items that we can get at least $450 worth of merchandise up in an hour. So 2 hours, we're listing $900 worth of merchandise, on and on and on and on. Again, if I'm listing $5 and $10 items and I only can list $75, $100 worth of merchandise in an hour, I'm wasting my time. You also have to think about your pack-up time, your pulling time, and all of that sort of thing. You also have to think about your shipping supplies. The biggest factors, again, in selling these cheap and low-valued items is sales dip off on them. They're not something that somebody has to have, so they're not spending the money on a $5 item they don't really need. Your supply costs go up, your listing fees drastically increase, and you waste your time. So all told, you've got to get better items in your store if your store model is based on selling $5 and $10 everyday household items, because again, it's not sustainable. If anything happens in your business whatsoever, you cannot sustain it going forward month after month when you're selling less and less items because of summer die-off. Now this can happen on any platform, at any selling venue there is. That's why you change with how everything else goes. If you've been selling on Amazon like us for a very long time, you might have been a bookseller like us, and your bread and butter were $5 and $10 items. We did great on $5 and $10 items. We made a ton of money on them because we could send them in. We didn't have to worry about shipping them. FBA was great with that. The shipping costs were very reduced to get them to them, and their storage fees were very reasonable back in those days. When Amazon increased the storage fees of the product several times in a very short time frame, it made it not worth our while to mess with those types of items, and we switched our bread and butter, the mainstay of our business, off of those cheap $5 and $10 items because it didn't work anymore. And that's the same spot I feel we are in on eBay right this very second. The numbers hold out, the math holds out. You can see other folks talking about it in videos about how their selling fees drastically increased out of nowhere when their sales died off. This is basic 101. When your sales dive off and you're still paying the same fees, your fees will skyrocket. So in some cases, you could be paying more in fees than you're actually making as a business. And that's the big factor there when you're listing cheap items just to get something up. If I think something's not going to do very well, I'm not going to list it. If it's only worth 2 or 3, 4 or 5, even 10 bucks, I'm not going to list it either singly. I would just rather throw it in a lot. You'll save 75% of your time in listing multiple items separately by putting in a lot, one listing, a higher value, a bigger return on your investment. You save your time, you save your shipping supplies right off the bat. We sell a lot of individual items and we list a lot of individual items, but we only, again, list items that are worth at least $19.99 these days. That is our bottom end on 99.99% of everything we sell. Lots are great. You don't have to list everything individually. You separate what's worth listing individually versus lots. Profit margin, as I said, doesn't mean anything if you can't sell enough to pay your bills or keep your store going or grow your business. My point, and most people that I talk to's point of being a reseller, is to have a viable business that covers all of your expenses, pays your household bills, feeds you, takes care of your car, your insurance, and your family. And that's what the most important aspect is, that you're making enough to do that. The best way I know how to do it, and the best thing that seems to work by every store I've looked at, is selling better, higher value items instead of hitting those very low valued items. And again, I do understand that you've got to start somewhere. You've got to figure out what works for you. At the end of the day though, those low valued items are taking down and dragging your business down. It's like racing to the bottom. A lot of folks just, again, aren't going to spend or mess with buying or sourcing out a $5 or $10 item offline with the potential of it getting lost, damaged, being conned, or anything else like that. So you've got to be careful and do your due diligence to make sure, again, that your math works out and you're making enough money and that you'll sustain your business. If you haven't been through a summer and you don't know what's to sell, you could be in for a rude awakening if you think that those $5 and $10 items are going to make you the best return on your investment. I can't afford to blow time listing stuff that's not going to give me much of a return on my investment. My labor, my time is worth so much per hour. I'm not going to sell myself short, and you should never sell yourself short either by listing, again, cheap valued items. If you're selling t-shirts for 10 bucks and you're including free shipping, you got to cover the cost of the item. You've got to cover your income tax on those items as well, which almost everybody doesn't think about until the end of the year. So you might think you're making a couple bucks, and at the end of the day, you've got fees, you've got expenses, the electricity and everything else, your taxes, your license, all that stuff eats away at what you think you're making. You've got to do the math, break it all down, see how much per hour you're valuing your time at. Make sure that you're listing the best stuff possible. If you want the best sales, you've got to list the best items. Those cheapo items, even if people buy a couple at a time because they're cheap, still aren't going to give you a huge return on your investment and will stagnate your business over the long run. You'll be a low valued seller, and your stuff, again, won't be as attractive as someone selling the better items. If, say, you're selling in a niche, most people who are buying niche items are looking to save up and buy the best possible item they can as an investment or a collector's piece. They want to fill that spot. And those very common items, only worth a couple of bucks, just aren't of interest to them. As well with niches, if you haven't been paying attention to the market is leveling back off again. The Wall Street money is starting to back out of high-valued comics and cards and all that kind of stuff. So the value in those sorts of items will steadily decline. You'll see some businesses selling them at reduced rates to get rid of inventory and the whole works as well. Not only do you have to be careful on the value of what you're selling, but you also have to be extremely careful on the categories and types of items you're selling, even if they're more expensive items. Again, you need to have that high profit margin. A good profit margin goes a very long way if it's a better valued item. Now, a $2 return on an investment that may have turned a 300-400% profit still isn't good in my book, because again, you're wasting your time with listing and photos. Even if you're scanning, you've got to store, ship, source, all that kind of stuff comes into play with that. Reselling, though, is still a completely viable business. We've been doing this for multiple decades, since the dawning of reselling, before eBay even existed. And overall, the ease of selling and flipping items is still there. Summer sales were great, as I said, so selling the right items goes farther than anything else. So the biggest warning, the biggest thing to watch out for is the math itself. Keep track of what your store fees are. Keep track of your margins. Keep track of the dollar amount of merchandise you're able to get up per hour. You want to increase all that across your business. Listing $5 and $10 items aren't going to do that and aren't going to get you very far, because you'll have to keep listing tons and tons and tons and tons of new ones just to get any ground and even stay at the same sales level you are right now. Only list good stuff. Only list better valued stuff. You'll go farther. You'll save your time. Combine the other stuff and you'll do far better. You'll lower your store costs and you'll increase the return on your investment. But anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
Not a long time ago, a very extraordinary ice was invented. It was cold and cherry and very magical, because when you poured water on it, it fizzed and grew into a soft drink so thick and cold you had to eat it with a spoon. And like nothing the world has ever known before, when you ate it, wild and wonderful things ran up and down, in and out, and all over inside you. And that's why today, in honor of that very extraordinary experience, we call this soft drink you eat with a spoon, chills and thrills.